Attention Northern Lights listeners. Whether you're growing cannabis indoors or outdoors, organically or hydroponically, EcoGarden Supply has the tools to help you succeed. From premium organic nutrients to advanced hydro systems, they've got everything you need to cultivate like a pro at home. Head to EcoGardenSupply.com now or visit them in person at 800 Transfer Road, Suite 3, St. Paul, Minnesota 55114 and elevate your cannabis. EcoGarden Supply. Growing supplies for the serious grower. And we're back. We're sitting here today with Zowie from EcoGarden Supply. How's it going, man?
Good.
Super happy to have you in the studio today. I feel like of the people that we've had on this show, you're the person that I've been talking to the longest, but that took the longest time to actually get into the studio and on the show.
Yeah, really?
I've been asking you cannabis questions for years now, going back to buying supplies with my students now like 4 or 5 years ago. So I appreciate you being the guy to sort of answer the questions that we have, and I'm excited to have you here to answer some of our viewer questions.
Right on. Well, hopefully I can give them some good info.
Yeah. So just before we jump into some of those questions, give us a little bit of a background. What was your introduction to cannabis growing? Sort of what got you started growing at home?
Yeah, so just an interest in smoking got me initially interested in doing the growing and stuff. So just understanding that, hey, I can do this on my own, and it could potentially be a lot of fun, and and it was a lot of fun to get going and stuff. So yeah, just my own smoking drew me into growing, and then growing grew itself, and it just kind of evolves from there. I think anyone that's been around for maybe a little while now understands that. Like, yeah, it kind of grows itself. The hobby kind of takes on a life of its own, and it's a really fun thing. And before you know it, you're knees deep in it all. And
yeah, that indoor growing math seems to.
Yeah, you kind of look up and you're like, what is going on? Mm-hmm. But yeah,
I love that. What I love is I've heard so many people talk about how cannabis was sort of their gateway to agriculture, learning about growing plants, sort of connecting with just being able to put a seed into a ground and say, man, I made this. And cannabis is such a cool nexus to teach those skills. Were you like a gardener at all before growing cannabis, or was that sort of your first?
I was not a gardener, but definitely into biology and outdoors. Okay. And yeah, it was definitely my gateway into growing for sure. Having that interest in cannabis and the connection with cannabis really allowed me to get involved, be interested, teach myself, learn on my own. When I started, books were the thing, so totally. We didn't have access to all of this.
You weren't part of Discords and forums online?
Unfortunately not.
Okay.
Pager Discord maybe, but other than that, no. So it's really nice to kind of learn on my own, be motivated by the plant, by successes, by failures. Just the whole learning of it all was just so interesting to me. It just, as soon as I found it, it was kind of a meant to be thing. It really felt like it was the thing for me, for sure. It felt very connected to the plant and the process.
Very cool. So how did you sort of transition from, growing at home, developing these skills, to being the guy that people come to ask questions of?
Yeah, just time and effort, just putting in more cycles, just growing, continuing to grow, continuing to improve, trying different methodologies, going from soil to hydroponics, just playing with everything in between, really having a lot of fun with it. I used to do a lot of skateboarding, and we built a lot of ramps and rail slides and all these things back in the 90s. And so that afforded me some handiness, and I was able to kind of like build my own systems and play around with that, really DIY it.
That's really cool.
Quite a bit. And yeah, it was a really nice experience. It taught me so much about the equipment, the systems, how to do it, and what I want to do relative to those things in that experience.
That's very neat. So a difference from the AC Infinity, all-in-one, plug it in and you're growing kind of setup.
Yeah, you guys are really just thrown into the mix with all of this great equipment. It really gives you so much functionality that would have costed us tens of thousands of dollars to do, not even 4 or 5 years ago. Yeah. So AC Infinity has definitely revolutionized home grows and really put those controls in these home growers' hands and given them the ability to really be a lot more pro than we've ever been. It's great. It's awesome.
It's pretty cool. I remember when I first started, really getting into growing and thinking like, man, I wish I could just like know how my plants are doing wherever I'm at. And now the idea of having a camera in my grow tent and the AC Infinity app on my phone, I really can just sort of know wherever I'm at and wherever in the world exactly how my tent is doing. And
it's a very amazing thing. It feels very luxurious to me just because having that access at any moment, what's the temp, what's the humidity, is the light on, whatever the thing is that you want to know. To have that at your fingertips it's a special and awesome thing.
Yeah, that's really cool. So I want to hear a little bit more about the transition that EcoGarden has gone through with legalization really coming on board. I mean, you guys were out there providing advice, really helping people to get their supplies, even before growing at home was a widely accepted legal practice. But what has that change been like now with those laws going into effect, it being something that people can talk more about much more? Have you guys noticed a change in either traffic or who's coming in?
Yeah, I would say it definitely brought in the people that wanted to grow, that were just waiting for legalization to happen. For those who don't know, Hydro Store is low-key another name for a cannabis grow shop.
Yep.
But yeah, it's really just made it a lot funner, a lot more open. We've always been able to like inform people and use different vernacular in order to like communicate relative to what cannabis needs without using the word cannabis. So it just, just the openness, the fun of it, sharing what you're growing, it's like we're all big kids with their toys again. And I see that a lot too. That's a really nice thing to see is like older guys. I'm 50 years old. There's other guys in their 40s, late 30s, mid 30s, and you can tell it's really brought fun back into their life. It's like you get older, you get responsibilities, life kind of evolves on its own, and you feel like all you do is take care of your responsibilities. So it's really nice to have this hobby to engage in and just watch people play like they're kids with toys.
Yeah. I love that. Well, and it's such a fun hobby, not only enjoying the growing aspect of it and saying like, that's fun, but then getting to the end and saying like, holy shit, like I just grew a bunch of weed. And that was something that I did and I enjoyed the process of it. It's a labor of love for sure. Yeah,
there's a special thing that happens when you're able to grow those plants and ingest them yourself. The connection that you get with the plant, it's you have to experience it to understand it. But yeah, it's a special thing, and it's such a cool thing when you get to connect with plants like cannabis, and then it does draw you towards other types of growing and gardening, vegetable gardening, and to kind of harken back to that other question, it definitely kind of got me. I always wondered when I first started, like, oh, will I be interested in tomatoes or this or that? Definitely not in the same way. But I have definitely been way more interested in growing my own food, having control of the quality of that, just kind of understanding our food environment right now. It's not the greatest necessarily, if you know.
Absolutely. Yeah, you guys, and you have some pretty cool seeds there, not cannabis seeds, but some heirloom like pepper seeds that I got a couple years ago. I was working for a farmer at a farmer's market at the time, and being able to go there and say like, oh, like tell me a little bit more about this pepper, and know that I could go home and grow it. And it sounds very like simple, like Tanner, of course you can grow peppers, but it's one of those hobbies that unless your parents taught you how to do or you picked up, you don't really find. And so cannabis growing being that gateway towards growing hot peppers or lettuce, or it's a cool path.
Yes, it's definitely a good entryway and a good connection to it for sure.
So you had a bunch of new people start coming into the store that were maybe waiting for legalization to come online. Now we're saying, hey, I can do this. I'm comfortable walking into a store and asking about it. What are some of the mistakes that beginners you sometimes see make most often?
I wouldn't call it a mistake. But relative to our style of sales, if you will, at EcoGarden, like we really want to support you and what you're going to want to do. And every growing method, requires a certain amount of money, certain amount of time, certain amount of effort. So relative to how much time they want to put in, how much money they want to put in, we will try to fit them to the methodology that suits their lifestyle. Because if someone doesn't have a lot of time, they got kids, they got a family,
totally.
Hydroponics might not be the thing for you if you can't afford to buy all the dosers and and all the equipment.
For sure.
You know, it can be very expensive. And then if you don't have the time to give it, your grows aren't going to go very well. Ultimately, we cannot bypass the time that the plant needs from us. That's where a lot of those commercial cultivations kind of don't shine as well as a home grower would, because a home grower can put so much time and effort, and you know, those commercial grows will never be able to do that unless they get robots or something.
Totally.
Yeah, good luck with that. I don't think that's happening anytime soon.
Yeah, no, absolutely. We're like a caregiver in Minnesota growing for themselves, and another person could have up to 16 plants at home legally, and the amount of care that you're giving to those plants versus the 16,000 square feet is just vastly different.
Right. And so what I would recommend to new growers or people who are getting into this hobby is look around at the methodologies, the soil, the cocoa, the hydro, the living soils, the aeroponics, the deep water culture. Look at all these methodologies and think about how that would go into your life, or what do you gravitate towards? What seems like something you would like, or it gives you enough to do, or it can be, you can minimally do it without putting a ton of time into it, and it's going to suit your life and your budget and everything you want to do. Because you don't want you want it to enhance your life. You don't want it to feel like too much of a chore. Otherwise it can be, a little daunting, or just kind of wear you out, grind you out, your energy gets low. So we want to kind of fit ourselves into a methodology that's going to work with our lifestyle. So getting people to just study on the methodologies, and when they come into the store to kind of already know, like, hey, I just want to do soil in containers, or I want to do a drip Rockwell with the drip drain to waste or something like that. Whatever their methodology, that kind of helps us fit them right away. We don't want to tell you what to do because we don't necessarily know what your life is like. And as much as we want to help people and service you guys, we do have a certain amount of time that we have to interact with customers.
Totally.
We have other things that we're trying to do around the store as well. So, we definitely want to give you the time if we have it, but cutting to the short of that, if a customer already knows where they're headed and what they would like to do, that really gives us a good jump off to start with them and work with them.
Totally. Because I know for someone new walking into a store, asking the question like, well, where do I get started might sound like a good starting point, but it's like the equivalent of walking into Home Depot and being like, I want to build a shed,
or a house.
What do I do?
More like a house, not even a shed. It's like a house. Like when you're asking, what should I do, or how do I do this? You would, and we're not doctors, but I mean, this is a very sophisticated thing. When you start to get into it, it has levels of sophistication, I guess I should say. It's not all sophisticated, but it can get really intense. And so, you want to kind of know what you're getting yourself into as you start to make choices and you're buying equipment, because we don't want people to have to buy equipment a second time. So it's like, if we can get you fitted right where you want to be the first time, it just saves everyone some hassle and money and time.
I always prefer to buy the 3x3 grow tent, and then later buy the 4x4, and then later buy the 5x5, and then explain to my wife, like, well, we've got all the tents. We might as well just set them up, right? And
you got to.
Suddenly we've got a ton of growth space, right?
I mean, what are you using that extra room for anyway?
Nothing like growing. So.
No.
All right. Well, so we asked a bunch of our viewers to send in questions that they had for you over the past couple of weeks, and we're going to start ripping through them. So the first one that we got, very general, I want to apologize. It was sent in by John, and he said, I'm looking to build a perfect system for growing my 4 legal plants at home. But if cost is no option, is hydro really better than soil? I know you were just talking about how better is a tough thing, but
better is really going to be subjective. It's like food, right? What's better to you isn't necessarily better to me. So it really just depends on you and your lifestyle. And that's where, kind of doing a little research on the methodology you're going to want to get into, it's going to be helpful so that we can really direct you and pinpoint you into what you want to do.
Definitely makes sense. With your own personal home grow, are you more of a hydro? I think
I am. Yeah. Okay, I've done everything, but I've kind of landed on just drip, drain to waste hydro.
Cool.
Done a lot of organic growing over the last couple of years. I'm kind of averse to having tons of medium inside my house. So I'm kind of saving those living soil beds for a situation maybe where I have a little hoop house or a little greenhouse or something like that. So for me, hydro's always been one of my favorite methodologies. Just kind of a control freak, so I like to have that control over the nutrients and the feedings and the waterings, and kind of just pushing on overall growth rates and stuff.
Totally, definitely makes sense.
While trying to like focus on quality. The highest quality for me is just ultimately what I'm chasing. Yields at this point. I'm sure we are all throwing away flour, unfortunately. It's a luxurious time to be in, but yeah, quality is really where I'm trying to focus on with that. So.
That definitely makes sense. Yeah, I love the idea of living soil, especially in like larger scale settings. I've found that like the 1 gallon living soil pot isn't the way to go, and
it's
so
a little tough. You kind of got to know a little bit to pull that one off. Maybe you guys should have the 1 gallon living soil grow contest sometime.
There we go. Oh, that could be fun. We got it.
They do the solo cup contest, and I've seen some of those, and it's amazing what people can do in these small spaces.
Yeah, there's a Reddit community microgrower that will do the Pringles can challenge, and nice. I love that. What's the weight that you can get out of a single Pringles can of plant? And fun. All right, well, so hydro, a good way to go. Obviously, many factors depending, but
I think for me, I like a lot to do. So I like having things to do when I get home, mixing my solutions, pH and stuff, just kind of going around and double checking things. Allows me to interface with the plants too. So I'm kind of looking around as I'm doing those things. I just kind of like to be with my plants, and, I like to smoke and just kind of be down there and just zoning out on them. You never know what you're going to see, what kind of pops into your head. So yeah, it's a lot of fun to have more to do in there for me, at least, and where other growers, they might want to pop in once every couple days and check on their stuff, and that's more conducive with their life. And you can grow amazing quality flower any way you do it. You just kind of have to know your methodology well, and work within the parameters of that. But yeah, I love the hydro.
Love it. All right, next question we got was from David. So his question is, what's your preferred drying method? There's a lot of talk about like the Canitrol, other similar devices, but in terms of a home grower setup, someone comes in there saying, what would you recommend? Are you more of a hang dryer? Do you utilize some of the machines?
That's a Pandora's box question.
Okay, all right.
Yeah, I mean, I've done all types of different growing, and then when it comes to like the Canitrol, it's another device that can help you. It's a tool. I wouldn't say that, you get it set up and you're going to just be able to push a button and not know anything, and it's going to do everything for you. It is a tool. You got to learn how to use it. It has its own parameters and functionality and controllability that you can mess with. But for me, I've always just done standard hang and dries.
Very cool.
Whether that's in a tent or whether that's in a room, just kind of depends on how much flour I have to dry. I prefer those methods, but I really like the Canitrol relative to just beginners being able to get into something that will control that environment without all the electrical cost.
Yeah.
Because if you start to get bigger spaces and tents and things, you're running fans, potentially dehumidifiers, air conditioners, you're running all this equipment to control these environments. And depending on how much flower you're growing as a home grower, you might not be filling up a tent or a closet, so you're dealing with smaller amounts of flour, which could make the dry cure process a little more touch and go, because if you're not there daily, maybe even like multiple times a day, checking, you got to check. Like, it is a thing where it's like, if you're not checking, watching, keeping tabs on things, it can get away from you. Like, we're going through these weather changes outside. People who are inexperienced, they might not know to reconfigure their equipment to deal with the heat now that they're getting, since the temperatures are going up high, but then we're still having cold nights. So you're not necessarily adjusting for these things, and then your flour either flash dries or gets a little sour or something because it stayed wet too long. And now we have a problem. So but I've always done it the standard way. I prefer just the hang dry, control your environment. If you can do 60-60, great. I wouldn't have people chasing that, because it could be something that if you're not holding those parameters correctly, maybe some of your sensors aren't quite right, you could end up ruining your flower by just trying to be too commercial, if you will. And remember, commercial grows. They're definitely going to have tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars into their facilities relative to their dry cure process.
Oh, yeah.
You know, and that's just that part, let alone the millions of they put into just the growing side and the business side of things. So we're trying to, you know, chase that, what commercial guys do. And if you can do that, great. But, you know, I don't like to use a ton of energy as I'm going through this. You know, I'm kind of one of these types who it's like, yeah, I want to kind of manage myself relative to my consumption of energy. And yeah, if I feel like I'm wasting energy, I kind of want to figure out a new methodology to dry and cure. So get back to the Canatrol. That's where that became very desirable to me, because I'm watching how much energy that device is using to hold its parameters, and it's nothing compared to the fans and the DHU and the portable AC that I use to dry a couple sticks in a 2x4 tent. And it's kind of a little ridiculous. So depending on how much flower we're growing and how much money we have and how much energy, because I know the Canatrol can kind of be way outside most people's, you know, wheelhouse of affordability, which is fine because you can do it, you know, just your standard air dry and cure. You just have to understand the process really well, so that depending on the parameters you hold, you're able to like be there when you need to be there, checking on it, either tightening things up so that it's holding humidity or opening things up so that the humidity is allowing to come out, watching your temperatures so that, we don't get potentially over 75 or close to 80. You know, we're really going to be like oxidizing off a lot of things that we want to keep. So, I mean, if we can just kind of, you know, it doesn't have to be super tight. I know everyone, all the information on social, people get really obsessive with 60-60. And I would just recommend people, hey, don't get too locked into that, because, you know, it could create more problems for you than you might want it to. Yeah, no, I love that. And I also love that emphasis on like the amount of power that is being put into growing the cannabis that we use. Like, I remember when I first got into concentrates and I was like, this is so cool. And then I first started learning more about the people that are actually making those concentrates and realizing like, oh, when I'm doing that, like fat glob or dab, that's like a ton of weed that's going into. You just smoked a pound of flower. Exactly. And thinking about the amount of energy that usually is used indoors when growing that, it's not nothing. And it's a lot. Yeah. It's a lot, you know. And so depending on, you know, a person's beliefs and our energy uses and how much we have and whether we got everything, we got as much as we need, or we're running out and we need to pay attention to that. I'm a believer in just like pay attention to what you consume, you know, be responsible. Like, I don't feel like we're just here to take everything under the sun and it's all ours. And there's other people that live. And so, you know, just kind of managing our impact and, you know, just doing our best to like minimize our overusage I think is important, because we get to consume as much as we want. And it's super luxurious. And I think it's important to pay attention to that. Yeah, it's definitely cool being in a day and age when there's probably more cannabis, like in a 1 mile radius of where we are right now, than there have been in entire civilizations. And not the worst time to be alive. That's for sure. It's a beautiful thing. Yeah. I love it. Yep. All right, so next one that we've got. So Amanda wrote in and said, I've been told that if you're going to invest the money in any like single piece of equipment, you really want to invest in getting a good light. Do you agree with that mentality? Or are there pieces of equipment that maybe are less critically important? Or sort of what are your thoughts? I would say a great book. Okay, I like that. I like that a lot. I want people to have something that they can go back to that rinses and repeats the same thing over and over. Growing is very contextual. And as we follow all these different social media types, and they're doing this and they're doing that, all these methods don't necessarily cross over if you don't understand how they can cross over. Totally. So if you're picking and pulling from different methodologies and you don't understand, like, hey, that guy's watering method is for living soil. We're not going to apply that to an hydroponic situation. Yeah. So just kind of understanding the nuance of those things is going to be helpful in directing you that way. So maybe buying a good light, important, but better to buy a light that
is in the spectrum that you want and is the
Well, the
power
book-
that reflects
The
what
book
you're looking
and
for.
the book is going to tell you that, right?
Yeah.
Because if we buy a light, do we know how to buy a light? So to me, the most important thing is to educate ourselves and know the right equipment. Because I would say there's no single piece of equipment in my mind. Obviously, you need a light. Like if there was something ultimately you needed, and that's the only thing you would, sure, a light. Like that's how I started.
Yeah.
People think, well, what do I need? I started with a light in my closet. I pushed the clothes to the left. I pushed the clothes to the right. And I hung the light up.
There we go.
It was
I like
very
that.
dangerous. But,
Yeah.
you can start very simply. You don't necessarily need to go to a full outfitted AC Infinity kit. We can start wherever we're at. So we're there to help you at EcoGarden kind of figure that out, help you to work with what you have. That's a good way to learn too, and this equipment can be a little daunting, getting everything all at once. I've seen a lot of people really just kind of toss it aside and just start doing kind of their own thing, really.
Yep. Yeah. Very cool. Is there a book that you recommend, or what's one that you've read that has been
We have
helpful?
the Ed Rosenthal's Grower's Handbook.
Yeah, totally.
Super informative, lots of great information there. Ed Rosenthal's been around forever, so if you've been in the cannabis industry, I'm sure you know his name. It's a really good, reputable source for cannabis growing information.
And I want to say, I think one of the most beautiful cannabis grow guides I've ever seen in my life, like the full page picture spreads that they have throughout there, is pretty cool.
It is a looker. Yes, it's a very good book visually as well. So yeah, you'll not only get that info, but you'll get some visual pictures to really just kind of juice you up.
I take it. All right. Well, we got a couple more questions, but first we're going to take a very short break, and then we'll be right back.
Right on. Single piece of equipment in my mind. Obviously, you need a light. Like if there was something ultimately you needed, and that's the only thing you would, sure, a light. Like that's how I started.
Yeah.
People think, well, what do I need? I started with a light in my closet. I pushed the clothes to the left. I pushed the clothes to the right. And I hung the light up.
There we go.
It was
I like
very
that.
dangerous. But,
Yeah.
you can start very simply. You don't necessarily need to go to a full outfitted AC Infinity kit. We can start wherever we're at. So we're there to help you at EcoGarden kind of figure that out, help you to work with what you have. That's a good way to learn too, and this equipment can be a little daunting, getting everything all at once. I've seen a lot of people really just kind of toss it aside and just start doing kind of their own thing, really.
Yep. Yeah. Very cool. Is there a book that you recommend, or what's one that you've read that has been
We have
helpful?
the Ed Rosenthal's Grower's Handbook.
Yeah, totally.
Super informative, lots of great information there. Ed Rosenthal's been around forever, so if you've been in the cannabis industry, I'm sure you know his name. It's a really good, reputable source for cannabis growing information.
And I want to say, I think one of the most beautiful cannabis grow guides I've ever seen in my life, like the full page picture spreads that they have throughout there, is pretty cool.
It is a looker. Yes, it's a very good book visually as well. So yeah, you'll not only get that info, but you'll get some visual pictures to really just kind of juice you up.
I take it. All right. Well, we got a couple more questions, but first we're going to take a very short break, and then we'll be right back. Ready to kick off your home grow? We've got the perfect hookup for you. MinnesotaCannabisSeeds.com. They've got everything from fast flowering strains to unique hybrids, all ready for growing in Minnesota. And guess what? Our listeners get an exclusive deal. Use the code NL10 for a 10% discount on your entire order. Don't miss out and get started with the best seeds. Start your growth strong with MinnesotaCannabisSeeds.com. Remember, NL10 for 10% off at MinnesotaCannabisSeeds.com. Grab your seeds today. And we're back. We're back in the studio with Casey of Natural Harvest. How's it going, man?
Hey, Tanner.
Happy to have you here. It is another month, March now. We got another seed box that we're going to be talking about. Tell us, what do we have coming in the box this month?
Yeah, no problem. Thanks for having me. This month, we're doing Sour Gorilla.
Okay.
Another one of those kind of diesel sour flavors that, for me, it's kind of a personal favorite.
That's really cool. Yeah, I've really been enjoying anything that has that word sour in the family recently. Tell us a little bit more about what people can expect with that Sour Gorilla.
Sure.
I mean, what does that taste like? What can they expect to get?
Yeah, so like I said, that sour kind of diesel-y flavor. And then it's a sativa leaning. So, a lot of people kind of want that more uplifting, not so heavy feel, go about your day. rather than just, lock you into the couch.
Very cool. So also we could probably expect this to maybe be a little bit of a larger plant in how it grows, less of that short and squatty and more of sort of the reaching towards the light. A great one for March.
Absolutely, yeah. A good mix of both where, you can still do something in your tent. It's not necessarily like a monster 25-foot plant outdoors, but
Totally. Yeah. I love that. Yeah, that's a really cool one. That gorilla lineage, I think, is a fun one to touch on and one that we've talked about on the show a little bit in the past. Gorilla glue, like that's a classic cultivar. I imagine you've had experience with that before?
I have. I haven't grown it, but definitely, sampled it over the years, and definitely
for sure,
one of my favorites.
Do you get similar sort of the notes of that, but now just like twisted and sour and a little bit more fermented, or you tell what can people expect from that?
I'd say that's a pretty accurate description.
Okay, all right.
Absolutely.
I love that. Very cool. So for people who maybe this is their first episode listening in, they heard the description of that seed, they went, oh my God, that is one that I need to try. Where would you send people to go and get the seed?
Sure. MinnesotaCannabisSeeds.com.
Okay. And maybe, it's March. We're starting to get a little bit closer to when that outdoor season really begins. You could be taking these seeds, starting them indoor today, and by the time outdoors is ready for us, your plants will be ready to thrive.
Well on your way for June, right? For a planting season. So,
yeah,
now's the time.
Very cool. Sour Gorilla. I'm excited to give that one a try. That'll be a fun one.
Awesome.
And then for those people that go to your website, they're looking to buy a couple other seeds along with that. I heard there's a rumor there's a discount code for people that are listeners to this podcast. Is that true?
Yeah. Anybody who watches this podcast, NL10, and we get 10% off your order.
Sweet. So NL10. Go to the website, MinnesotaCannabisSeeds.com. Fill up your cart. Choose what you want to grow, indoors or maybe soon outdoors. NL10. Get a discount on all of that. MinnesotaCannabisSeeds.com. Awesome. Thanks for coming, Casey.
Thanks, man. Appreciate it.
And we're back. So this next question is a playful fun at a family member of mine. I have a family member that was growing indoors, very excited to show me her grow. It was inside of a room that she had. She had her lights hanging, and she goes, yeah, I opted to not buy any fans. I just sort of come in like a couple times a day and just blow on them.
Okay.
Because, you get in the air and we're good. So my question is,
We're good.
We're good. How important is air circulation for home growers? Can you just throw plants in a tent and say, meh? Or should you probably have fans, intake air, things like that?
Well, in lieu of coming in and blowing on them yourself, we definitely recommend having some air movement in there. It's not always needed. It is definitely preferred, but you will find that out. So, you can fuck around and find out.
Okay.
We generally recommend having it. I have done grows where I had no air movement inside and the plants did perfectly well. You can kind of, you'd be surprised what you can get away with until you can't, but the plants will let you know that, and or the pests and pathogens will too.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, absolutely. You hear that, Aunt Connie? No, I'm just kidding. No, I do think it's an important reminder that, we think of what does a plant need to grow? Well, you look outside and it needs soil, it needs light, it needs water. And we're moving indoors. It's the exact same type of setup. But there's so many other things that just happen out in nature that you lose when you're bringing that indoors, especially as you try to strip away more and more of the, I want to get pests out of here. So let's get the soil out. And all of a sudden you just have salts that you're adding, but that doesn't remove possibility of problems.
No, there's always problems regardless.
Yeah. All right. So the next real question that I have. So Samantha wrote in and she said, what's your take on defoliation generally? I've seen some growers that swear by that you have to strip the fan leaves. Others say leave them alone. It's like a storage spot for energy for the plant. In your own personal experience, are you a defoliator? What's sort of where you go?
I am a defoliator in the right situations.
Okay.
You don't have to defoliate, depending on if you do or do not have the time for it. It does come out of the commercial side of things where they're trying to drive production more and yields more. And so that would be, to me, kind of the genesis of it. So if you are trying to drive production and yield, It is a practice that happens all over commercial industry. I do utilize it. I don't strip as hard as they do in a commercial operation. One, I don't think it's that necessary in my home environment to go that hard on my plants. I don't, they're already dealing with a ton of stress. So the more that we, kind of have these extreme stressful events on the plant where we strip all of its foliage off, it's going to bounce back, no problem. And you'd see that if you did it. But at the same time, it's like I'm trying to keep the stress at a nice kind of medium point. Everything, these environments are continuous and constant. If you look outdoors, it's not happening. It's up and down. You're getting all these different times of rest for the plant and relaxation, or, more wind or rain, or these more intense environments.
Days of shade. Yeah, totally.
Yeah. So, when you're 12 and 12 at 100% on your LED and the fans are bustling and the irrigation is running, or you're in there with your water can and doing your thing, it's always on. The stress is always on. So I kind of use the defoliation. I kind of sit back a little and relax on that a little bit, because I'm not interested in the yield. I'm more interested in the quality of the plants. Again, there's a ton of flower out there these days, so having flower is not a problem, but having really high quality flower is what I want. And so I kind of err my practices on the side of trying to have the highest quality flower I can have. And I would say, just not doing any defoliation could be detrimental to the plant. I know there's a study out there that they did that kind of talked about, and if you guys want to look it up, I believe Bruce Bugsby, most people know who he is, cited the study. But he talked about how if a leaf isn't receiving, I want to say like 100 to 200 UMOL, that it potentially might be a net negative energy drag on the plant.
Okay.
And so the leaves do provide energy, but they also require energy. So we have to think about the energy balance there. And so if the leaf wasn't receiving the proper amount of UMOL, it might be a net negative energy drag on the plant. And at that point, it's taking from the plant. It's not providing to the plant. So take that for what it's worth. Like I said, it really depends on your model and what you're doing and what you're chasing. You can't get 100% quality while beating the crap out of your plant all the way through its cycle. It's not going to happen. The plant only has so much energy to give. And so you kind of have to look at it that way and reserve the energy for where you want it. So if you want yield and you're pushing on flower size and you got your light up high, I mean, these LEDs are crazy intense. They really put the pressure on the plant.
Oh, yeah.
So, you're going to drive some quality out of your plants. And I hand out cuttings to friends that do more production style growing, and I'm able to see that because when I'm growing it just a little more relaxed on things, these nuanced qualities and flavors can kind of come out better. When these guys are driving them hard and they're just pushing and they're trying to get their yields out of them, sure, it's the same strain, you can notice it, but there's definitely a huge qualitative difference that I pick up relative to terpenes and just that nuance of the flower and the flavor and the smell and the colors and the experience too, the effect. It's definitely going to have something to do with the effect. So yeah, I guess it really, you kind of have to figure out what you want. And I think we all want it all, but you do have to prioritize what your goal is. And for me, the goal is quality.
And I think that's such a cool part about cultivating at home versus like Cresco Labs. They're never going to say like, yeah, let's cut our growth rate by 1/3. Right. But man, it's going to be like better stuff. So it's fine, right? And for a home grower, you can absolutely make that choice and say, yeah, I'm cool taking a 20% loss if it means that what I get, I feel like is at least 20% better. And I can say to myself at the end of the day, yeah, that was a good choice.
Right. But, and I think a grower has to ask themselves if they want to grow a bunch of mids or if they want to have some higher end flower. I would say if you're growing mids, maybe just buy flower. I think if you're spending this time and effort, you're kind of missing the mark of what you can have at home with yourself. Any good home grower, I don't think they're ever going to be happy with a dispensary. I've been doing this a lot of years. I've gone all over the country and I'm generally pretty dissatisfied. I would say when you're a grower and you're in a group of other growers, it's kind of a special place to be if everyone's been doing it for a while, because these people know what they're doing. They've procured certain cultivars that are really nice. They've taken the time to learn how to grow them and grow them well. And when you start to do that and you start to go experience dispo flower, you just realize it's kind of not necessarily in most of their wheelhouse to be able to produce what we can produce at home.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's been one of like my personal favorite parts about legalization is so many more growers that have been doing this for quite a while are now a bit more open about what they're doing and being able to talk to people that have been growing for 10, 15, 20 years and say, man, you grow really good stuff. And I've heard before that dispensaries are for tourists. And I think there's some truth to that.
I would say they're for people who, you know, maybe don't have a connection or maybe new to cannabis. And so they don't know where else to go and get it, or they don't have a friend that just has extra stuff to hand out to them.
Yeah. What are some of the things that you're chasing at home right now? I know that that's a question that we'll have growers in and they're like, well, it changes every day. Like I'm always looking for new stuff. But in terms of your grow right now, is there like a certain flavor profile or effect or something that you're seeking out most?
I would say, you know, the diesel-y, gassy stuff is real popular right now. Mm-hmm. People are moving away from candies, moving more towards your chems, your diesels. Those type of profiles, GMOs. We're a big fan. I'm kind of chasing that. I'm looking for pine, lemon, gas. It's just a profile that's just not as common as it used to be. People who are smokers in the early 2000s, late 90s would be pretty connected to these flavor profiles. And so, bringing them back. And then, you know, they have more potency. Certain colors, if you will, kind of to me signal lower potency. That's not always true, but in a general sense, it is true. So, you see some really, if you've been a smoker for 20 years and you see lime green flower, it says something different to you than a guy who's been smoking for 5 years and sees his purple flower. Yeah. You know, lime green, fire, potent, heavy duty, gassy. Yeah. So we're kind of hunting some of those gassier things right now. That's what we're after and looking for. And then to kind of playing with some older genetics to newer genetics, you know, some of the older stuff isn't as visually desirable as all the new Instagram flower. So mixing those together and getting some of the effects that are in that older flower into this newer flower is desirable. There's plenty of newer flower that kind of runs a little flat on the effect. It runs high in THC or whatever, but the effects are really flat. And over time, we're just kind of not getting the experiences we want to get. So changing up what you smoke, maybe the time periods that things come from can kind of help give your system a change or a break on other things that might be getting overdriven and not allowing you to really have the fun you want to have in your experiences. Yeah, no, that's really cool. Are you like pheno hunting through gear right now or? Yeah. Cool. So 707, I'm hunting a Hollywood from him, which is a wedding cake by Kush Cleaner. Mm-hmm. Kush Cleaner is definitely older varietal coming out of the late 90s, 2000s with the Jax Cleaner versus an SFV. Mm-hmm. And then a wedding cake is pretty standard stuff. Sure. I'm sure most people know wedding cake's always super solid if you can find a good one. So, absolutely. Yeah. And a fun washer, I've heard. That's nice, good genetics for that. It's very good genetics. Oh, yeah. Very cool. Wedding cake's good stuff. Yeah. So when you're in a legal state, you know, you're put in a situation where you're having to like go to a dispensary and seek out flower. This is the question that I like to ask people because I feel like everyone sort of has a different perspective to it. How do you go about finding flower that you're interested in smoking in a dispensary, especially in one where maybe like it's not the deli style where you're able to interact with and smell with the plant? Sort of what are the things that you're looking for, or how do you make that decision? Yeah, I probably would be looking for certain breeders, genetics there. Okay, for sure. Maybe a brand name that I would know of. Really trying to make sure that the thing that I'm getting is the thing that I want. There's plenty of name games out there. It's easy just to say, hey, it's Sour Diesel, when really it's Jack Herrera or something, whatever. Oh, yeah. You know, so if you don't know, you wouldn't know. It takes the experience to kind of differentiate these strains. So, people that are new to the industry can kind of get hoodwinked in a certain way. Once you kind of understand some of those games that the retailers will play, you can kind of eliminate some of the BS for yourself, and you kind of start to see patterns emerge where the type of company it is. Like, I'm probably not stopping at a smoke shop that has tobacco to get my cannabis. I would definitely be looking up the reviews of the places, trying to see what strains they have, where are they getting their flower from, and what are those commercial grows like, and what genetics do they work with? I mean, I'm kind of a nerd, so
you're not just looking for the word super boof and saying like that's
no,
I'm
I'm really more interested in getting the real genetics that I'm looking for, understanding that these companies hold the true cutting of the thing, the legendary plant that we want. There's a lot of fake out there, or a lot of diluted plants out there that kind of, or maybe came from the same family, but they're not the thing. You know?
Yeah, it took me an embarrassingly long amount of time after I started growing at home to realize that there's people selling those packs of seeds for like $50 of some really famous cultivars.
Right.
It comes into the soil and it comes out and it doesn't smell and taste the exact same way. It's shocking how that happens.
Yeah, it's kind of an amazing thing. You would think that, hey, if you actually used the real thing in a genetic breeding and got the offspring and started them, that you would potentially have something at least close to what you have, but it doesn't always work that way. And when these guys are just kind of after money, they could just be outright lying to you about what they're doing, or just getting diluted genetics and, hey, they said it was Skittles, so it's Skittles to us.
Totally.
But if you've smoked known things, they're special for a reason. And in my experience, it's you're not going to find it even in the seeds.
Yeah,
it will take you so long. How do we know out of the population how many times that cutting pops up? If it's 1 in 20,000, good luck with 4 at a time.
Yeah.
So even these large companies that do thousands of plant hunts, they're not throwing out banger after banger cross. I mean, they do good work, but they're not selling people packages that all hold legend plants in them.
Well, it's the reason people will pay $1,000+ for a cut of a plant. And
right.
People might look at that and say that's ridiculous, but how much time do you want to save of hunting for that exact same smell and yield, and if it ever comes about? Right.
Yeah. You might just kind of be chasing your tail. So there's a certain point where, time is of the essence, and you have to, do you want to get right to the Skittles cut and just get it? 'Cause you can get it nowadays and get right to the real thing. Or do you want to walk through a bunch of seed packs of Skittles stuff and find whatever you find out of there? Who's to say you don't find something better? Exactly. The likelihood, it's rare.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it comes back to sort of what we started talking about, which is, what are you looking to get out of this hobby? Are you looking to be able to say, I put out the largest yield out of my basement of anyone? Like, cool. There's a grow style for that. Right. Or are you looking to have, I grow really quality product that I love sharing with people and showing off? And there's a style for that as well.
Yeah, there's all different methods and ways of doing this. And, it really just depends on what you want. What I want isn't necessarily what you need or what someone else wants. So I stay in my lane with that. Like, my preference is my preference,
So one final question before we go. I think a lot of people take away things from their day job and apply it to many different parts of their life. I was a special education teacher, and I still think I sort of solve problems in a way that a teacher would, even though I haven't been in the classroom for years. As a grower, are there things that you have learned or lessons that you've taken away that you find yourself using at other parts of your life not related to growing?
Yeah, most definitely. First thing that comes to mind for me is just putting in the work. You can't bypass the work in growing. If you want your plants to be healthy, happy, vibrant, you're going to have to put the effort in. So if you don't have the time and effort to put in, it's definitely what I've learned, because, when I'm away from the grow, or I don't do that a little extra thing, or I'm not giving them a little extra 5 minutes, I I'm not getting the quality of flower I would get when I'm putting that time in and giving them the love and the attention they need. So yeah, putting in that time, putting in that effort, it's the same thing with life. You get out what you put in.
Yeah.
So, you can't shortcut progress and getting to that really nice quality product or that really nice quality of life that we want to have. You have to put the effort in, and then you will reap your rewards. So yeah, just doing the work on a daily basis. You just kind of rinse and repeat and get after it. And being older, I've just kind of relaxed into it. Being a younger person in America, it's like we're always looking for shortcuts to get to that place we want to be. As you get older, you start to realize really the place is the journey. The path is where you want to be. When we hit these goals, it's nice, but it's a little lackluster. So being in the work, the daily work, and really allowing myself to get in there and do what I need to do and enjoy the environment. It's very therapeutic for me to be down there with the plants. So yeah, just doing the work, man. You gotta get in there and doing the work and be with your plants and really give them your energy and your love.
The grass grows where you water it.
There you go.
Yeah, very cool. I like it. Well, I appreciate you coming in today and answering some of these questions. What I think is so exciting is for a lot of our guests that we have in, we get to ask you the questions and it's sort of like, find them on social media or whatever. But if people have grow questions for you, they can just come into the store and
most
chat
definitely.
with the team there.
You just come in and hang out with us and
An IRL podcast, if you will. Like just come and chat without the microphones.
Who would have thought?
I know. So where can people go about finding you? Where is the store located and what's your guys' website?
Yeah, so EcoGardenSupply.com is our website. We're at 800 Transfer Road in St. Paul in Suite 3. The way to enter the store, the best way to enter would be at Dock 7. You'll see an entrance right there in the back of the building at Dock 7. We have a Instagram, EcoGarden Supply, all lowercase. So yeah, we're pretty much at those 3 places.
Awesome. We'll put them in the show notes below. Are you guys thinking of doing the outdoor vegetable plant garden this year?
Yeah, we always put our vegetables out there. They get a lot of sun, so they do really well. And we just like to have some greenery and that blacktop. It's just real kind of barren and desolate back there. So that greenery helps.
With all those semi trucks, it sure brings a nice little bit of joy back there. That's for sure.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, Zowie, thank you so much for coming in today.
Thanks,
we really
Tanner.
appreciate it.
Appreciate you guys.
We'll be right back.